They say Hollywood is built on secrets. But sometimes, the secret isn't what people are hiding. It's what they suddenly erase. And when Kim Kardashian and Kris Jenner deleted Meghan Markle and Prince Harry from Kris's 70th birthday photo drop, it wasn't just a quiet cleanup. It was an earthquake, a message, a warning, and maybe the beginning of a feud no one expected, yet everyone now wants to understand. Because the world watched the photos go up, and then the world watched them disappear. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But why? Why would the two most powerful women in reality entertainment, women who understand optics, brand value, and scandal better than anyone, risk igniting a PR firestorm by removing Meghan and Harry from their celebratory moment? What really happened at Kris Jenner's 70th birthday party? What went down behind the velvet curtains, the fragrance of champagne, and the flash of diamond-lit cameras? Why did Kim and Kris panic? And why was deleting Meghan and Harry the first move in what insiders now call the Hollywood silent war? Tonight, we dig into that question. We break down the night, the whispers, the strange tension that guests felt before anyone realized what it meant, and the confession, yes, confession, that Kris reportedly shared hours after those photos vanished. But before we go there, let's pull you right into the moment this whole storm began. Picture the scene. Kris Jenner's home, transformed into an empire-level celebration. Guests dripping in couture gowns, velvet suits, glittering heels. 100 cameras, 100 wigs, 100 secrets. Champagne fountains sparkling under warm gold lights. Music humming low, the kind of bass that vibrates through designer floor tiles. Everyone expected Hollywood royalty to be there. Everyone expected glamour. But no one expected actual royalty. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry stepping into the Kardashian world? That wasn't just surprising. That was explosive. Because for years, the Kardashians have perfected one thing, controlling the narrative. And Meghan Markle has perfected something else, disrupting it. So when the Sussexes walked in, Meghan in a sleek, tailored gown, Harry in a perfectly fitted jacket, eyes turned instantly. Not just because they're famous, but because their presence meant something. Alliances, optics, power. A blending of two kingdoms, Buckingham Palace and Calabasas. A merger of influence. But here's where the night takes its first twist. Insiders say Kris didn't invite Meghan and Harry out of pure friendliness. No, this invitation came after weeks. Yes, weeks of quiet Hollywood negotiations. A conversation involving agents, managers, PR strategists, and even one major streaming executive who thought seeing the two families together would send a powerful message. A message of unity. A message of cultural dominance. A message that the Kardashians were not just reality TV stars. They were American royalty. But almost immediately, something felt off. You know how, sometimes, a room shifts when the wrong people stand too close? Well, according to one guest who spoke anonymously, that's exactly what happened. The energy changed. Meghan smiled yes, posed yes, but the nerves? They were visible in the small gestures, her hands brushing her dress as if smoothing wrinkles that weren't there. Harry's eyes scanning the room, landing on faces he recognized and faces he definitely didn't. And Kim Kardashian? She watched Meghan, not with hostility, not with admiration, but with calculation. Because Kim doesn't just look at people, she studies them. She reads the angles, the potential headlines, the hashtags, the optics. And on this night, the optics were tricky. You might be wondering, why would Meghan and Harry even want to be there? Why step into a world that thrives on exposure when they've spent the last few years fighting for privacy? Well, maybe that's the contradiction that makes this story so irresistible. Because the Sussexes are in a strange place right now. Bridging two worlds, belonging to neither. Too royal for Hollywood, but too Hollywood for royalty. Caught between prestige and celebrity. Between the palace and the paparazzi. And the Kardashians? They represent exactly what Meghan once wanted to escape, and exactly the kind of power she needs now. So the night began with polite smiles, soft hugs, and those stiff Hollywood compliments you only give when cameras are watching. But then, the moment that started the internet wildfire. Kim Kardashian posted the birthday photos. A carousel of glamorous, diamond-soaked moments. And tucked between those glossy frames, there they were, Meghan and Harry, smiling, present, officially part of Kris Jenner's birthday celebration. The internet exploded. Fans reposted, blogs screenshot, celebrity accounts commented, trend alerts went out. News outlets grabbed the story instantly. Meghan and Harry join Kardashians for Kris's 70th birthday. Royal Hollywood alliance confirmed. What does this mean for Meghan's brand? It was everywhere, for about an hour. And then, the photos vanished. Not edited, not replaced, just gone, wiped, deleted, without explanation. And let me ask you this. Why would the Kardashians erase a moment that could boost their own reach? Why delete photos that went viral instantly? Why distance themselves from Meghan and Harry after showing the world they were all celebrating together? What made Kim tap that delete button? What made Kris demand a cleanup? What did they see or hear that made them believe the photos were a threat? Because make no mistake, Kim Kardashian does not delete lightly. This woman has archived her life, but rarely erased it. Every frame she posts is part of a strategy. Every caption, curated. Every connection, intentional. So when a deletion happens, especially one this public, there's always a reason. A big one. And according to insiders, the reason wasn't just about protecting Meghan and Harry. It was about protecting Kris, protecting Kim, protecting the Kardashian image from something unexpected that unfolded that night. Something unplanned, something damaging, something that would have shifted the narrative in a direction the Kardashians simply could not afford. But before we dig into that, let's return to the exact moment when everything shifted. A moment one guest described as a ripple that moved through the room like tension in a wire. A conversation Meghan had with one of the Kardashian sisters. Yes, one of the sisters. That didn't go the way anyone expected. A moment that wasn't caught on camera, but absolutely caught attention. Because Meghan has a way of commanding space. A way of delivering lines that sound polished but land hard. A way of making people feel like she's either confiding in them or evaluating them. And during this birthday party, Meghan said something casual on the surface, that triggered concern. Not dramatic, not explosive, just revealing. Revealing enough that it made its way back to Kris within minutes. And Kris, who has built an empire on two things, control and reputation, knew instantly that the optics of the moment had changed. Kim's photo wasn't just a birthday post anymore. It was evidence. Evidence of an alliance the Kardashians suddenly weren't sure they wanted. But here's where the night gets even stranger. Because after Kim deleted the photo, Kris checked her phone and realized something terrifying. She had posted her own version of the photos too. And those were going viral even faster. Screenshots, fan edits, celebrity gossip accounts reposting, searches skyrocketing. Every second the photos stayed up, they were becoming harder to erase. Kris reacted. Not with panic, not with anger, but with precision. She grabbed her phone. She stepped aside. And she made a call. A quiet call. A call that multiple guests say shifted the entire energy of the night. Was it a lawyer? A PR strategist? A Kardashian insider? Or someone who warned her that keeping Meghan and Harry in those photos was a liability? Whatever was said during that call led to one thing. The photos disappeared. Kris deleted hers. Kim deleted hers. The internet noticed. And that's when the speculation erupted. But here's the twist. This wasn't the end of the story. Because right after the deletions, Kris finally told someone close to her the real reason the photos had to go. A reason that had nothing to do with lighting, nothing to do with posing, nothing to do with aesthetic. A reason rooted in fear. And in that confession lies the truth that blew this story wide open. But what exactly did Kris say? What was she trying to protect? What moment from that night convinced her that Meghan and Harry needed to be erased immediately? And why was she so afraid of leaving the photos up? What did she know that the rest of the world didn't? Because that's where the real story begins. And what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. It started long before the cameras came out. Long before Kim Kardashian posed by the marble bar and Kris Jenner raised her glass. Long before Meghan Markle's smile froze into place and Prince Harry shifted awkwardly beside her, unaware of the avalanche that was about to begin. The truth is, the storm was already building the moment the first guest walked through Kris Jenner's front door. And if you ask the people who were there, they'll tell you the same thing. You could feel it. Not immediately. Not with fireworks or drama or a confrontation. No, this wasn't the kind of tension that slaps you in the face. This was the quieter kind. The dangerous kind. a shift in the room's temperature, a sudden hush in conversations, the sensation of electricity gathering in the air before lightning strikes. But let's slow down and drop you right into that moment. Kris Jenner's mansion wasn't just decorated, it was transformed. The kind of transformation only Kris can pull off. Black orchids dripping from candelabras, champagne towers reflecting soft golden light, plush white carpets rolled out over the original floors, just so the lighting team could bounce the glow exactly where Kris wanted it. It wasn't a party. It was an event, a statement, a reminder to Hollywood. This is the house that Kris built. Guests arrived in waves: stylists, producers, A-list actors, mega-influencers, musicians, billionaires whose faces don't appear online. Everyone dressed to impress. Everyone aware that being invited to this birthday meant they mattered. But suddenly, around 8:47 p.m., the energy shifted. The door opened, and every head turned. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry had arrived. For a moment, just a moment. The room fell still. Not silent, not dramatic, just still, like someone pressed pause. It wasn't because they were the only royal-adjacent figures in the room. This was Hollywood. People here were used to fame. But this was a different kind of fame. A heavier one. A controversial one. And that's exactly where the night began to fracture. Because before Meghan and Harry stepped inside, the party belonged to Kris. But the second they crossed that threshold, the narrative shifted to them. No one expected them to attend. No one knew they were invited. And more importantly, no one was prepared for how their presence would change the dynamic. Here's where people forget something crucial. Every Kardashian event runs on a delicate ecosystem, a structured balance of status, alliances, publicity, and planned interactions. Meghan and Harry's presence? They broke that balance. But not because they misbehaved. Not because they demanded attention. Not even because they carried baggage from the royal family. No, the real issue was that they threw the entire Kardashian social strategy off course. The Kardashians are masters of image control. But the Sussexes bring chaos wherever they go, intentional or not. Let's start with how they entered. Meghan walked in with that polished smile she's perfected for years. Warm, soft, inviting but guarded. And Harry followed a few steps behind, head slightly lowered, hand touching Meghan's back as if silently asking, "Are we doing the right thing?" But the guests weren't just staring because Meghan and Harry were there. They were staring because the Sussexes didn't look like guests. They looked like a statement. And Kim Kardashian? Kim saw it instantly. Kim was standing near the staircase with Khloe, laughing at some comment a producer had made, when her eyes locked onto Meghan. She didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. She simply blinked once, the kind of blink she uses when evaluating a problem or an opportunity. Khloe noticed too. Leaning slightly closer, she whispered, "Did Mom invite them?" But Kim didn't answer. She was already doing the math. Meghan plus Harry plus Kim plus Kris plus Instagram equals headlines. And headlines equal power. Except, power is only useful if you can control it. And Kim wasn't sure she could. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, why would Kim Kardashian, a woman who thrives on global attention, feel uneasy about the presence of Meghan Markle? Simple. Meghan doesn't play by Hollywood rules. You can predict celebrities. You can predict influencers. You can even predict billionaires. Meghan? She's unpredictable. Not because she's wild, but because she's strategic in a different way. A royal way. A way that implies consequence. And Harry? He looked tense. Not angry. Not uncomfortable. Just preoccupied. Like he was already thinking about what headlines would pop up the next morning. Like he was preparing to protect Meghan from something unseen. But the person who felt the shift most clearly? Kris Jenner. Because Kris didn't just see Meghan and Harry enter. She felt the moment shift like a general sensing a battlefield turn. Kris is not just a mother. She is a strategist, a brand architect, a commander. And in that instant, Kris understood one thing. Her birthday party had just become a negotiation, one she hadn't planned for. Still, she approached Meghan and Harry with that famous Kris Jenner warmth, greeting them with hugs and glowing compliments. Cameras flashed. Guests smiled politely. Everyone tried to act normal. But here's the thing about Kris. She can smile warmly while calculating a crisis. Because even the smile she gave Meghan that night had two layers: hospitality on the surface and concern beneath it. Now, here's where the story takes a subtle turn. As Meghan and Harry moved deeper into the crowd, something happened that set the tone for the rest of the night. People stopped conversations mid-sentence, not because Meghan demanded attention, but because others didn't know what to say around her. Was it appropriate to talk about the royal family? Was it rude to bring up the Netflix deal? Should they discuss Meghan's projects? Should they avoid Harry's family drama? The room went from lively to measured. The Kardashians rely on free-flowing energy. This felt like a velvet chokehold on the atmosphere. But here's the real twist. The tension wasn't coming from Meghan. It was coming from the guests. Because Meghan and Harry symbolized something uncomfortable for the Kardashian crowd. Unpredictable consequences. One wrong comment, and it could end up in a lawsuit, a headline, or a PR nightmare. Some guests whispered things like, "Why are they here? Did Kris invite them? Is this for a project? Are they filming something? Is Meghan going to talk about this later?" In other words, no one trusted the moment. And yet, for the first 20 minutes, Kris still believed she could manage it. Then came the first fracture in the evening. The photo. The one that Kim would delete later. The one that sparked the entire scandal. Here's what guests say happened. Kim's photographer asked for a group shot near the crystal bar. Kim wanted it curated. Symmetry, lighting, balance. Classic Kim. She gathered a few A-listers, positioned them perfectly, and then Meghan walked over. Not aggressively, not dramatically, just naturally. She simply assumed she was part of the moment. Harry followed behind, smiling politely, hands clasped. Kim didn't object. She didn't say no. She didn't reposition anyone. But she did hesitate. Just long enough for someone nearby to notice. Just long enough for Kris to sense something was off. The photo was taken. Click. Flash. Simple. But here's the part no one saw. Not until later. When the camera flashed, Harry's expression changed. Not dramatically. Not alarmingly. But sharply enough that Kim noticed through the review screen. A small frown. A shadow in the eyes. A hint of discomfort. And in Hollywood, that is dangerous. Because one awkward look from Harry can turn into Harry uncomfortable around Kardashians. Harry fights with Meghan at party. Harry caught an awkward moment with Kim. And that's exactly what Kim feared. Still, she posted it anyway. At first. Why? Because the benefits were too good to resist. But the consequences? Those arrived faster than anyone predicted. Kim posted the photo at 10:12 p.m. By 10:14 p.m., it was trending. By 10:20 p.m., it was everywhere. By 10:25 p.m., someone inside Kris's team approached her and whispered something in her ear. Something that made Kris stiffen. Something that made her look straight at Meghan. Something that made her check her phone with urgency. And that moment, is what transformed a glamorous birthday into a crisis in the making. Because whatever Kris was told, it wasn't small. It wasn't harmless. It was big enough that Kris's next steps would eventually lead to the deletion heard around the world. But before we reveal what Kris learned, we need to understand what happened seconds after she checked her phone. Because that's when the entire night began to spiral. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. You might be wondering, why were Meghan Markle and Prince Harry even at Kris Jenner's 70th birthday party? On the surface, it seems simple. Celebrities invite celebrities. Royals and reality stars crossing paths isn't new. But anyone who spent time in the inner circles of Hollywood knows this. Nothing is ever just simple. Invitations in this world are strategic. Carefully calculated. Sometimes transactional. Sometimes protective. And sometimes downright manipulative. The Sussexes' presence at Kris Jenner's celebration wasn't just a social call. It was a chess move. And the first question anyone inside the mansion asked themselves, sometimes out loud, sometimes in whispers, was, who orchestrated this? Insiders suggest the story began weeks before the party. Weeks filled with whispered calls, digital back and forths between PR teams, and executives crunching numbers. Not for ticket prices, not for catering costs, but for optics. How would Meghan and Harry's attendance affect brand perception? How would it influence headlines the next day? How would it impact streaming deals, endorsement opportunities, and, yes, the Kardashians' own carefully curated image? Sources reveal that it wasn't Kris alone who extended the invite. Kim Kardashian's team played a key role, and it wasn't just about adding star power to a birthday bash. It was about creating a story, a narrative so compelling that it would dominate social media, trending feeds, and entertainment coverage. A story where Hollywood met royalty, where the American royal family of influence and the British royal family of prestige shared the same frame. But that's where the contradictions began, because Meghan and Harry, no matter how polished they appear, bring unpredictability to every room they enter. There's a history, a tension, a media machine that follows them everywhere. And the Kardashians knew that. So what motivated the invite? One insider explained it this way. It wasn't just for Kris to look good, it was for Kris to be part of history, to be part of a narrative bigger than any Kardashian event before. Yes, it's as ambitious as it sounds. Kris Jenner isn't just celebrating a birthday. She's orchestrating a moment, a statement, a blending of worlds. And in Hollywood, statements carry consequences. When Meghan accepted, Harry followed. Their arrival wasn't casual. It wasn't spur of the moment. It was choreographed, vetted, and, most importantly, analyzed. Everything about their presence had been weighed against the potential risk. From the color of Meghan's dress to Harry's subtle expressions, every variable mattered. But no amount of preparation could prevent the tension in the room. Let's consider the dynamics. Guests arrived expecting a standard Kardashian event. Laughter, drinks, glamorous selfies. But Meghan and Harry weren't standard. And that's where the unease came in. People whispered. Some silently compared their own outfits to Meghan's polished ensemble. Others noted Harry's posture. Guarded, slightly tense, arms occasionally brushing Meghan's back. Some feared being caught in a moment that could be misinterpreted by the media. And that fear is contagious. Kim and Kris, for their part, handled the entry gracefully. Warm smiles, polite hugs, Instagram-ready poses. But underneath that veneer of hospitality, a calculation was taking place. Every second Meghan and Harry lingered in the room was analyzed. Would their interactions with other guests be photographed? Would their presence overshadow the host? Would their body language tell a story that no one intended? Here's where it gets interesting. Some insiders claim that Meghan may have played a subtle psychological game. Without appearing overtly strategic, she smiled, nodded, engaged in conversation, yet maintained a subtle distance from those who might pose a threat to her narrative. She allowed herself to be seen and noticed, but on her own terms. Harry, similarly, moved carefully, balancing charm with discretion. Kim observed all of this with a hawk's eye. The Instagram carousel was already in her mind. Where to position herself, where the light hits perfectly, which guest will be featured, and most importantly, how to include or exclude Meghan and Harry from the ultimate group shot. Why exclude them later? That's the million-dollar question that haunted everyone after the photos vanished. But in this chapter, we're still tracing the origin of their invitation. Some reports suggest that streaming executives were indirectly involved. Sources claim that a particular executive, known for producing high-profile reality documentaries, suggested Meghan and Harry's presence could supercharge the brand's synergy between Hollywood and royalty. That recommendation, although not official, carried weight with Kris Jenner's team. Suddenly, the decision wasn't personal, it was strategic. But strategy in Hollywood comes with a caveat. You can't predict reactions. You can't predict optics. You can't predict how Meghan's calm, composed smile might be interpreted by fans, media, or other guests. And once the Sussexes walked in, reactions multiplied exponentially. Guests began adjusting their behaviors. Conversations shifted. Attention moved. Photographers jockeyed for angles. Celebrities repositioned themselves subtly, aware that being near or away from Meghan and Harry could either enhance or damage their personal narrative. And this, my audience, is where the real tension began to simmer. Now, let's talk about a key contradiction. Kris Jenner and Kim Kardashian are masters of control. They build empires on image management. Yet, they knowingly invited two guests whose mere presence could destabilize that control. Why? Because sometimes the gamble is worth it. Because sometimes the narrative is bigger than the risk. But the gamble comes with immediate consequences. By the time Meghan and Harry were photographed with other A-listers, whispers began circulating. People noticed subtle interactions. Observers speculated about potential confrontations. And in the back of Kris's mind, though she didn't yet reveal it, she realized this party had become a live test of crisis management. And yes, the crisis was brewing long before anyone saw it online. Because the minute Kim posted the photos, The dynamic shifted from internal tension to global scrutiny. The invitation had worked, but in a way Kris had not entirely foreseen. She got the attention she wanted, but not all of it was positive. The optics weren't entirely in her control. And when the deletion happened, that's when the world started asking the big question: why? Before we get to that, let's examine another layer: the psychology of the invite. The Sussexes, by virtue of who they are, embody contradiction. Royalty meets Hollywood. Tradition meets disruption. Privacy meets spectacle. That tension makes them fascinating, yes, but also dangerous in a room designed for curated perfection. Kris Jenner's decision to invite them could have been seen as bold, inclusive, and modern, but it also carried potential hazards: leaked moments, misinterpreted smiles, perceived slights. Some insiders say that Kris even warned her team: if they're coming, we have to watch every angle, every interaction, every photo. Nothing leaves the room without review. Yet, even with that precaution, humans make mistakes. Cameras flash, eyes wander, gestures are misread. And for the Kardashians, any misstep could translate into social media controversy, late-night jokes, or headlines that could outshine the host. And this is exactly what happened. By the end of the evening, the initial purpose of the invite, brand synergy, headline dominance, celebrity spectacle, was being overshadowed by an entirely different narrative: controversy. One source claims that Kris, observing Meghan and Harry's interactions with certain guests, realized the photos might complicate her messaging. Another whispers that Kim saw something in Harry's expression that just didn't feel right. The combined pressure, coupled with the public's obsession with the Sussexes, planted the seed for the deletions that would occur hours later. The key takeaway here is simple: this wasn't a casual social call. It was a calculated experiment. And as with all experiments, the results are unpredictable. Meghan and Harry's attendance at Kris Jenner's birthday was designed to create a story. But the story they created far exceeded anyone's expectations. And it would only escalate from here. Because once the photos were posted, once the social media storm began, the question everyone asked, both publicly and privately, was: why were they invited if their presence was going to cause chaos? That question, my audience, is just the beginning. And the answer leads directly to the first major confrontation behind the scenes. One that set the stage for the deletions, the whispers, the panic, and the confessions. But what came next? What happened the second Kris realized the narrative was spinning out of control? And how did the Sussexes react to being the center of this calculated social experiment? The answer isn't what anyone expected, and it would change the night forever. Before the first champagne glass touched the marble countertop, before the laughter floated across the chandelier-lit room, the real drama was already brewing behind the scenes. And here's the part most people never see. For every Kardashian event, there's a war room. Not a literal room with soldiers, but the metaphorical battlefield where strategies are formed, optics are scrutinized, and potential disasters are defused before they reach the public eye. And this night, Kris Jenner's 70th birthday, was no exception. In the hours leading up to the party, Kim, Kris, and their closest advisors gathered in a side room that few guests ever noticed. The lighting was softer here, the air tinged with the scent of expensive perfume and old leather-bound notebooks. It was a room of control, a room of calculation. And on this particular evening, it had only one focus: Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. The moment the Sussexes' attendance was confirmed, the war room went into overdrive. Planners ran through every scenario. What if Meghan overshadows the host? What if Harry's expressions are interpreted negatively? What if fans misread body language or social media screenshots are taken out of context? Every single possibility was analyzed with military precision. Because, in Hollywood, perception isn't just important, it is everything. Kris Jenner leaned over the table, her eyes scanning the list of scheduled guests, their seating arrangements, and a timeline meticulously crafted to the minute. Kim's team had created multiple social media strategies. Each post was reviewed. Every caption, every angle, every potential headline. In one corner, a PR strategist scrolled through trending topics, anticipating the reaction the moment Meghan and Harry entered. In another corner, a photographer prepped lighting cues for the exact moment that would become the Instagram shot. And that's when the first wrinkle appeared. One of the assistants quietly informed Kris that a royal insider had sent a note confirming that Meghan might bring up her own projects during conversations with certain Hollywood elites. It was a small detail, seemingly innocent, but in the context of the evening, it became a ticking time bomb. Every word Meghan spoke could be dissected and repurposed for headlines. Every gesture, every smile, could be misinterpreted. In the war room, tension spiked. Everyone understood the stakes. One misstep, and Kris Jenner's carefully orchestrated birthday could spiral into a media nightmare. Kim's role in this room was fascinating. Outwardly, she might have seemed relaxed, scrolling through her phone, but the truth is, she was running real-time damage control in her head. She knew exactly what Meghan and Harry represented: unpredictability. And unpredictability, in a world where control is currency, is dangerous. Her internal monologue likely went something like this: keep the optics clean, control the angles, limit exposure, don't let them take the narrative. Meanwhile, Kris wasn't just thinking about the optics, she was considering legacy. Her 70th birthday was more than a personal celebration. It was a public statement about power, relevance, and influence. Inviting Meghan and Harry was strategic, yes, but it also posed a unique risk. Royals have a gravitational pull of their own. Their mere presence could overshadow any host or celebrity in the room. And as Kris surveyed the flow of preparations, she realized something chilling. The narrative might no longer belong to her. As the party commenced, reports from insiders suggest that the war room continued operating in tandem with the live event. Headsets, walkie-talkies, discreet messaging apps, all were in use. Every guest movement, every conversation snippet, and every camera flash was monitored. No one wanted an unintended viral moment. But Meghan and Harry, by their very nature, introduced variables that could not be fully controlled. Their history, their fame, and their complex relationship with the public made them wild cards. And wild cards in a meticulously planned environment? Dangerous. At one point, Kris reportedly pulled Kim aside. In a hushed tone, she asked whether Meghan's team had shared any intentions regarding interviews or social media posts. Kim responded with her own observations. Meghan's presence was calculated, as if she knew how each interaction would be perceived. The two women exchanged looks, a silent acknowledgement of a mutual understanding. The Sussexes were not just attending. They were commanding attention, whether deliberately or not. Then came the first internal debate. Should Meghan and Harry be prominently featured in the official photos? One camp argued yes. The association with the Sussexes would elevate the event, generate buzz, and produce content that could dominate media cycles for days. The other camp argued no. The risks of misinterpretation were too high. An unflattering expression or a misread gesture could spiral into headlines, overshadowing Kris herself. The debate grew heated, with advisors providing data, predictive models, and social media analytics. This wasn't casual conversation. It was a calculated negotiation, and the stakes were massive. But the most critical moment, insiders say, occurred when the first group photo was taken. Cameras flashed, guests smiled, and Meghan and Harry were positioned within the frame. On paper, it was perfect. But behind the scenes, Kim's instincts screamed otherwise. She noticed subtle nuances in Harry's expression, a flicker of discomfort, a fleeting doubt, that could be magnified by the media. And Kris, already tense, sensed that this image had the potential to trigger a chain reaction that could undermine her event. The war room was alive, buzzing with whispers and quick decisions. Someone suggested delaying the photo's social media release. Another advised posting it immediately to control the narrative. Everyone weighed the pros and cons, from likes and shares to potential headlines and trending hashtags. The room's energy was electric, bordering on panic, and yet every action was executed with precision, as if rehearsed. Then, something unprecedented happened. A guest approached the war room with a confidential observation. According to sources, this guest had witnessed a private interaction between Meghan and a high-profile Hollywood executive. The conversation, innocuous on the surface, had overtones that could be construed as competitive, challenging the Kardashian brand. This was enough to trigger a strategic pivot in the war room. Plans were revised. Contingencies were activated. And in a move that would become crucial, the decision was made to closely monitor any images that included Meghan and Harry. By the time the first social media posts went live, the war room was fully operational. Every notification was scrutinized, every comment analyzed, every potential leak treated as a possible crisis. And the irony was unmistakable. The very guests who were supposed to elevate the event, Meghan and Harry, had now become variables that could destabilize it. As the night progressed, insiders report that tension between the Sussexes and certain Hollywood elites became palpable. Not overt, not confrontational, but noticeable. Eyes lingered. Smiles were measured. Conversations were cautious. And Kris, observing all of this through a combination of security footage, real-time messaging, and discreet whispers from her team, realized something significant. The party she envisioned as a celebration was evolving into a strategic battlefield. By the end of the evening, the war room had made several critical interventions. Photos were selectively approved. Certain guests were redirected for interviews. Strategically timed toasts were adjusted to control exposure. And in a move that would shock the public later, Kim and Kris coordinated the deletion of certain images from social media, including the now infamous photo featuring Meghan and Harry. The reason? Simple in theory, complex in execution: control. The war room had determined that, despite all precautions, the presence of the Sussexes introduced too much unpredictability into the narrative. Their brand, their history, their capacity to dominate the story in ways that could overshadow Kris Jenner herself. These were factors that demanded immediate action. And the deletion of the photos, though controversial, was a defensive maneuver. A strategic retreat in a high-stakes media battle that no one outside the mansion could fully understand. But here's the twist. The war room couldn't anticipate one thing: Meghan and Harry's reaction. According to insiders, once they noticed the deletion, the Sussexes were neither passive nor silent. Their response set in motion a series of events that would ripple across Hollywood, social media, and even the royal family. The war room had planned for almost everything, but not the unexpected maneuver from the Sussexes that would challenge the Kardashians' authority in real time. And that, my audience, is where the real drama begins. Because when celebrities, royals, and media empires collide, control is never absolute. The war room may have tried, but Meghan and Harry introduced variables no one could predict, and the consequences would be explosive. The night that began with a meticulously planned celebration had now transformed into a battlefield where every glance, every smile, and every deletion mattered. And what came next would turn a seemingly simple birthday party into a story that the world couldn't stop talking about. It was supposed to be just another picture. A group photo. A fleeting moment captured in time and posted to social media. But as anyone who has ever navigated the Hollywood maze knows, sometimes a single image can ignite a storm that no one anticipates. And for Kris Jenner's 70th birthday, that image wasn't just a picture. It was the spark that set off a chain reaction that would dominate headlines, gossip feeds, and social media commentary for days. Let's rewind for a second. The party was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers hung like stars overhead, reflecting golden light across a room filled with A-list guests. The air was thick with perfume, laughter, and subtle tension. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry had already made their presence felt, moving through the room with ease, greeting celebrities with a combination of warmth and careful discretion. Guests noticed their quiet confidence, their poise, and, yes, the way their mere presence subtly shifted the energy in the room. Kim, meanwhile, was orchestrating the perfect group shot. Cameras had been strategically positioned, lighting meticulously adjusted, and guests herded into place with the precision of a Hollywood director. Every angle mattered. Every smile, every posture, every expression was under scrutiny. The goal? A flawless Instagram-ready image that would dominate feeds and elevate the birthday from glamorous to legendary. Enter Meghan and Harry. They approached the group photo like seasoned performers. Meghan smiled politely. Harry maintained a composed posture, hands lightly resting at his sides. On the surface, it appeared effortless. But in a room where every glance and gesture is magnified, small details became significant. Harry's hand slightly brushing Meghan's back, Meghan's posture angled subtly towards a high-profile actor nearby. These tiny movements spoke volumes to the trained eyes in the room. And Kim saw it. She saw every nuance, every potential headline, every possible misinterpretation. But she also knew this. The photo would go viral. It would be shared. Screenshots would circulate. Memes would be created. And for better or worse, Meghan and Harry would dominate the narrative. The balance Kim and Kris had worked so hard to control now hung by a thread. The camera clicked. Flash. Perfectly timed. The group photo captured smiles, laughter, and, most importantly, the Sussexes standing among Hollywood royalty. Everyone looked polished, elegant, and celebratory. But underneath the smiles, an invisible tension was brewing. After the initial excitement, Kim reviewed the image. Her eyes narrowed. Something about Harry's expression, a subtle furrow, a fleeting glance, set off alarm bells. A single glance that could be interpreted as discomfort, disapproval, or judgment. Enough to make headlines spin. Enough to threaten the carefully curated story Kris wanted to tell. And that's when the first whispers started. One of Kim's assistants leaned in, voice low. Do we post this now or wait? It's perfect, but... Harry looks tense. Another team member added. In Meghan's posture, people might read it wrong. It could dominate the narrative. Kim didn't respond immediately. She studied the photo, scrolling between shots, analyzing angles, lighting, expressions. She knew that in the world of social media and celebrity optics, small details could become viral headlines within minutes. A raised eyebrow, a misread smile, a shadow across a face. Meanwhile, Kris watched from the side. She noticed Meghan's subtle interactions with other guests, the way she commanded attention without speaking loudly, the way Harry's composed demeanor contrasted with the high energy of the room. The strategic minds in the war room were already calculating the ripple effects. Every guest, every camera, every glance mattered. And then, the critical decision was made. Kim tapped the upload button. The photo went live. Within moments, it was everywhere. Screenshots circulated. Gossip blogs reposted. Celebrity news outlets caught wind. Social media exploded. The room buzzed with excitement, but also with anxiety. Because the moment had shifted. The perfect shot was no longer just a memory. It was a narrative in motion. Fans and followers immediately noticed the subtle dynamics captured in the image. Comments flooded Instagram. Observations about body language, speculations about alliances, and even criticisms of positioning within the photo. Every detail was dissected. Every smile analyzed. Every gesture became fodder for headlines. And that's when Kim noticed it. A single detail she hadn't accounted for. Something minor but significant. Something that threatened the story she and Kris had meticulously planned. Harry's expression. Meghan's angle. A subtle interaction with a nearby guest. Enough to shift the perception from celebration to potential controversy. Kim's instincts, honed over years of navigating fame, brand management, and social media influence, screamed a warning. The moment had to be controlled. The optics had to be managed. And the first step? Monitoring the narrative in real time. Within minutes, Kris and Kim huddled in the side room. Screens displayed trending topics, hashtags, and fan reactions. The group photo dominated feeds, but so did speculation. The positive glow of a glamorous party was being overshadowed by subtle tension. And that tension was dangerous. In Hollywood, perception is reality, and the perception here could spiral out of control. A debate ensued in the war room. Some advisors argued for leaving the photo up. It was perfect. It was polished. It was what everyone wanted to see. The association with Meghan and Harry could elevate the birthday coverage. Others argued the risks outweighed the benefits. Misinterpretations, headline grabs, fan theories. These could dominate the story in ways Kris and Kim couldn't control. Kris's voice finally cut through. We monitor every interaction. We control every image. We protect the narrative. If this photo starts spinning beyond what we can manage, it goes down. Kim nodded. Her decision was swift and deliberate. The photo had already gone live, and she knew action had to be taken quickly. In a world where seconds matter, hesitation could be costly. But the universe, as it often does in Hollywood, had other plans. Because even as the photo spread, even as fans and media consumed every pixel, Meghan and Harry were aware. Observers in the room noted subtle expressions, a hint of amusement from Meghan, a controlled glare from Harry, as they realized how much attention the image was generating. And that awareness introduced another variable. Meghan and Harry didn't overreact. They didn't storm off. They didn't make a scene. But insiders say they were quietly strategic. Every smile, every pose, every gesture was calculated, intentional, and noticed by the cameras, by guests, and by the war room. The perfect storm of optics had formed. By the time Kim and Kris reconvened to discuss the social media rollout, it was clear the group photo, meant to be a celebratory snapshot, had become a potential liability. And the decision that followed would define the night, influence headlines, and spark debates across social media for days. That decision? Deletion. The group photo featuring Meghan and Harry vanished from Kim's Instagram. From Kris's, screenshots remained. Gossip blogs captured every pixel. Fans questioned, theorized, and speculated. And in that instant, a calculated maneuver meant to control narrative became a story in itself. But the deletion was not the end of the story. Because once the images were gone, the whispers began. Guests began speculating. Analysts began theorizing. And the world, already captivated, couldn't stop asking the question, why? And what came next would escalate tensions, reveal secrets, and expose a side of Kris Jenner and Kim Kardashian that few had ever seen. The photo had changed everything, and the night was far from over. The moment the first deletion happened, no one fully realized the consequences. It began as a subtle decision, almost instinctive, but it quickly snowballed into one of the most talked-about moments in Hollywood that week. A single tap on a screen would set off a chain reaction that would ripple across social media, gossip blogs, and the private circles of power in ways that Kris Jenner and Kim Kardashian could never have fully predicted. It started with Kim. She had just posted the group photo. The one capturing Meghan Markle and Prince Harry in the midst of the star-studded birthday celebration. The lighting was perfect. Everyone was smiling. And yet, as Kim reviewed the image for the umpteenth time, she noticed something that made her pause. It wasn't Meghan's smile or Harry's posture. It was the energy of the image itself. A subtle shift in dynamics. A perception lurking beneath the surface that could easily be magnified by social media scrutiny. Kim knew the optics were fragile. She knew the moment had power, but she also knew it had risk. Because in Hollywood, risk is the language of headlines. Every second the photo remained online gave someone, somewhere, the opportunity to misinterpret it. The narrative could spin out of control. And Kim, ever the strategist, understood that a viral misread could not only overshadow the birthday celebration, but could potentially challenge the image she and Kris had meticulously cultivated for decades. Her thumb hovered over the screen. One small decision, delete or leave up, carried massive weight. She scrolled through the comments, scanned the trending topics, and glanced at the live reactions streaming in. The responses were mixed: praise, excitement, speculation, and subtle criticism. And then came the realization. Leaving the photo up was no longer a neutral act. Every like, every share, every screenshot could feed a narrative that the Kardashians were unprepared to manage. Kim made the decision in an instant. She tapped delete. The photo vanished. Just like that. From her account. From her story. From the curated world she had so carefully orchestrated. Gone. The effect was immediate. Guests who had been casually scrolling through their phones noticed. Some whispered. Others exchanged confused glances. Even the photographers in the room paused, realizing that one of the biggest snapshots of the night had been wiped from the platform in real time. It was a subtle act on the surface, but beneath it lay a calculated strategy. Kim understood that in the digital age, deleting an image is almost as powerful as posting one. It creates questions, curiosity, speculation, and nothing drives engagement faster than mystery. But the deletion also sent a signal that resonated across the room, quietly but powerfully. To Kris Jenner, it was a reassurance, a sign that she and Kim could still control the narrative. She had built an empire on careful curation, and this small act reinforced that she was still in command. To Meghan and Harry, it was a warning, not confrontational, not loud, but unmistakable. The deletion made them aware that their presence was not just noticed, it was monitored, that their every move, every gesture, every expression could be subject to real-time scrutiny and control. And for the rest of the guests, the deletion was a puzzle. They were left to speculate. Was it about optics? Brand protection? A personal issue? The ambiguity itself created a quiet tension in the room, a subtle unease that spread like a current through the party. But deleting the photo was only the beginning. Within minutes, whispers began circulating. Staff members noticed the removed image and speculated about why. Guests sent private messages to each other, trying to piece together the reasoning behind the sudden disappearance. Some assumed a technical glitch. Others suspected a deliberate move. And a few, the ones closest to Kris and Kim, understood immediately. This was a calculated decision designed to manage perception and control the narrative. It's important to understand the psychology behind that deletion. In Hollywood, image is everything. Public perception is the currency of influence. And when two global brands collide, the Kardashian empire and the Sussex brand, the stakes multiply exponentially. A single photograph can shift power dynamics, alter media narratives, and influence the perception of thousands, if not millions. Kim knew that leaving the photo up was a gamble she wasn't willing to take. And yet, the deletion was not without consequence. As soon as the photo disappeared, a ripple effect began. Screenshots had already been taken. Gossip blogs had captured the moment. Fans had shared it across multiple platforms. The act of deletion itself became a story. People began asking, why would Kim delete this photo? Was there tension between Meghan and the Kardashians? Was there a conflict we weren't seeing? In the next few hours, social media exploded, not just because of Meghan and Harry's attendance, but because of the deletion. It became the headline, Kris Jenner deletes Meghan Markle and Prince Harry from birthday photo, followed by speculation, conspiracy theories, and endless debate. And the irony was sharp. In trying to control the narrative, Kim and Kris had inadvertently amplified it. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, the war room was alive. Phones buzzed incessantly. Advisors monitored real-time reactions. Every media outlet, every influencer post, every trending hashtag was analyzed. And then came the second part of the strategy. Kris Jenner herself deleted her version of the photo. Her reasoning was clear. The first deletion by Kim had been a test. A controlled move to gauge reaction and manage immediate exposure. Kris's deletion reinforced the decision, signaled consistency, and sent a quiet message. The narrative is under control. The optics, carefully monitored, would no longer spiral without intervention. But this action was not without tension. Some insiders suggest that the deletion caused a subtle friction among staff and advisors. Should they have simply waited and let the viral moment play out? Or was immediate action necessary? Kris's experience told her the latter was essential. In Hollywood, moments are fleeting, and perception is everything. A delayed response could lead to misinterpretation, speculation, and, ultimately, loss of control. Meanwhile, Meghan and Harry noticed. According to guests, they were composed, polite, and measured, but there was a subtle shift in their demeanor. The deletion wasn't confrontational, but it was unmistakable. A signal that their presence was being managed, monitored, and, in some sense, restricted. It was a reminder that in Hollywood, influence is wielded silently, subtly, and sometimes mercilessly. The first deletion also triggered an internal debate. What else should be removed or adjusted? Which images would remain? Which interactions should be highlighted? The war room was abuzz with calculations, predictive modeling, and contingency plans. Every detail was scrutinized. Every possible narrative evaluated. And through it all, Kris and Kim maintained a calm exterior, masking the urgency beneath. Some insiders reveal that during this period, Kris made a private call to an unnamed advisor, reportedly emphasizing the importance of protecting the event's legacy. "We control the story," she said. "We decide what the world sees. Nothing leaves this room without our approval." And in that moment, it became clear, the deletion wasn't just about a photo. It was about control, perception, and power. But the public wasn't privy to any of this. All they saw was a vanished image, a moment erased. And that erasure sparked curiosity, speculation, and debate. Fans flooded social media with questions. Why were Meghan and Harry deleted? Did something happen at the party? Is there tension between the Kardashians and the Sussexes? Every deleted image became a mystery to be solved, fueling endless discussion. And that, ultimately, is the brilliance and the danger of the first deletion. A single tap on a screen transformed a controlled event into a story that would dominate conversations for days. It wasn't just a defensive move. It was the first domino to fall in a series of strategic and dramatic events that would follow. The first deletion sent a clear message. In this room, in this moment, control is absolute. And yet, it also set the stage for conflict, tension, and revelation. Because while Kim and Kris believed they were managing perception, the Sussexes, the guests, and the world were about to challenge that narrative in ways no one anticipated. And what came next, the reactions, the whispers, the escalating curiosity, would escalate the drama to a level that would make headlines and social media trends look like minor footnotes. Because the first deletion was only the beginning. And what came next would change the story entirely, and no one saw it coming. Kris Jenner has weathered countless storms in her life. Scandals, media frenzy, family betrayals, business deals gone sideways. But nothing, insiders say, prepared her for the unique storm brewing at her 70th birthday party. Because this wasn't a problem that could be solved with a smile, a press release, or a strategically placed Instagram post. This was a problem that demanded precision, speed, and unflinching authority. In other words, Kris Jenner's crisis mode had officially been activated. It started subtly. After the deletion of the first group photo featuring Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, Kris realized that her carefully curated evening, the one she had spent weeks planning down to the last detail, was slipping out of her control. Guests had noticed the deletion. Some whispered. Others shot furtive glances toward the war room, trying to gauge reactions. And as the buzz spread through the mansion, Kris understood the implications. What she thought would be a minor, strategic maneuver had now become a full-blown perception issue. The first call came in within minutes. One of her closest advisors, a veteran of countless Kardashian crises, whispered from the side. "Kris, the social media narrative is spinning faster than we anticipated. People are speculating, and the screenshots are already trending." Kris didn't flinch. Not outwardly. Her poker face remained intact. But internally, every muscle, every thought, every instinct fired into action. This wasn't just about controlling the optics anymore. It was about containing a potential PR disaster before it escalated beyond repair. She immediately summoned Kim, who had been monitoring the social media reaction in real time. They huddled in a quiet corner, away from guests and cameras, and began assessing the situation. Notifications were flashing constantly. Gossip outlets were posting analysis. Fans were dissecting every detail of Meghan and Harry's positioning, body language, and expressions. Within the Kardashian universe, the stakes were enormous. Control over the narrative is control over influence, and influence is currency. Kris's first decision was simple but critical: maintain authority. Every move going forward would have to reinforce that she, and she alone, decided what the world saw. Every advisor, assistant, and photographer was brought into the loop. Security was briefed not on safety, but on optics. Cameras, phone flashes, and live recordings were monitored with unprecedented vigilance. In Kris Jenner's crisis mode, nothing was too small, nothing was too trivial, and every second mattered. Then came the consultation. Kris spoke directly to her inner circle. "We control every frame, every angle, every post. Nothing leaves this room without our approval. Not a single image, not a single comment, not a single whisper." Her voice was calm, commanding, and precise, a trademark tone that had saved her family empire countless times before. But the gravity of the situation was clear. This wasn't a typical crisis. The involvement of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry introduced variables that were unpredictable, uncontainable, and potentially explosive. While Kris was orchestrating behind-the-scenes maneuvers, Meghan and Harry were quietly aware of the attention they were drawing. Guests noticed subtle shifts in their demeanor. Meghan's smile, polished and composed, was accompanied by a flicker of calculation in her eyes. Harry's posture, usually relaxed and confident, carried the weight of careful observation. Insiders described the pair as calm on the surface, but every movement was deliberate. They were conscious of how each gesture could be interpreted, photographed, or even weaponized in the media. Kris's next move was decisive. She reviewed the photo feed again and realized something crucial. Leaving any image of Meghan and Harry up could create a narrative she could no longer control. A misinterpreted glance, a minor interaction, even a whisper between guests could be taken out of context, amplified online, and ultimately redirect the story away from her celebration. The solution was both simple and dramatic: total control. Every post would be scrutinized. Every image would be vetted. Every social media share would be monitored in real time. And if any content threatened the narrative, it would be removed immediately, without hesitation. Insiders claim that Kris's crisis mode escalated further when she received a discreet report from a guest. According to this source, a Hollywood executive, someone with a reputation for leaking details to the press, had noticed Meghan and Harry interacting in ways that could be spun negatively. Nothing scandalous, nothing overtly inappropriate, but enough that, in the eyes of the war room, it represented a potential threat. Kris acted fast, instructing her team to track every interaction and prepare contingency responses. As the evening continued, the tension in the room became palpable. Guests whispered in corners, occasionally glancing at the war room. Meghan and Harry maintained composure, moving gracefully through the crowd, but there was a subtle awareness in their gestures. They understood that their presence was being scrutinized, not just for social interaction, but as a strategic component in a much larger narrative battle.